Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And for those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. Now, people are going to go, Jason, I thought you weren't going to do as many of these lately. Normally I wouldn't, but as you guys know who pay attention to my training clips, I've had some sound malfunction. I have a really good mic coming in later today, but I just feel like I need to be productive and make videos. In spite of that during some of my downtime. So I'm making some current events just to do something in the morning. Not that I don't have lots of other videos to put up. I'm way ahead on them, but I want to be productive. So I thought I would cover some of these because they're valuable learning tools. So we have Scott Herman, and someone had linked me a video about his hamstring tear, and he's saying it's not a tear. It's a tear. Okay, it's a grade 1 tear. And I think we need to address some of that because this is something I can actually help Scott with. I'm someone who has experience with this. I've dealt with this over the years. I am in my 40s. I am a lot stronger than Scott. I lift a lot more weight. I don't really get these sort of injuries. And I'm not saying I haven't had a couple of hamstring pulls, but there were common elements involved. The times that I have pulled a hamstring, I had cut specific exercises out of my training for prolonged periods of time. It's due to muscle imbalances. That's what actually causes it, even on max deadlifts. That's what causes it, muscle imbalances. It's weaknesses. And Scott has very, very, very clear weaknesses that need to be addressed. And the problem is that he went to a guy who, for lack of a better word, and this is just my opinion, is basically a quack. Okay, basically a quack, who did nothing but placebo stuff for Scott without addressing what's causing his injuries to begin with. And when you watch his exercise selection and you watch Scott even deadlift historically, it's very, very obvious. It is extremely obvious why he tears and pulls hamstrings. Okay, it's blaringly obvious to me. Some of you may be able to figure it out also, and this is correctable just by proper strength training. Because the thing that we need to remember, most of these injuries we get from lifting are caused by muscle imbalances, mobility problems, things like that. Our solution to them is not therapy. Our solution to them is correct strength training to correct all those imbalances, right? That's what we need to fix them. That's what we need to fix them. And again, I'm talking even for people who live really, really heavy, because that's a big part of what we discuss here, and observing with the different grades and the coaches and people have done over the years to build elite athletes with the lowest injury rates, that someone like Scott, who's not even lifting that heavy, he shouldn't be getting these sort of injuries. He shouldn't be getting these injuries at all. But he went to this guy who's basically a quack, and you want something that screams quack to me: cupping. Cupping. There is not only not any science behind it, the actual explanations behind it are so ludicrous that a person who knows basic physiology would roll their eyes and make fun of you for repeating it. And that's the thing that shocks me, is how many fitness professionals fall for this sort of silliness. I know people, I've known multiple people who get cupping done and like, oh yeah, it makes me feel better. It's placebo, okay? And I'm not saying placebo is not useful for pain management. Placebo can be fantastic for pain management, but that's all that's happening here. It's a very expensive placebo effect. And the problem is that it's damaging your skin, damaging your body. I mean, you're creating big bruises on yourself and inflicting injury on yourself for a placebo effect. And that's one reason people do get the placebo, because they see the big, massive, round bruises, and then they get a placebo from it because they can visually see it. So it must be doing something. But this idea that, oh, you're pulling old blood out of the muscle by creating suction on the skin. Do you guys understand how literally stupid that is? No, I mean, step back and visualize that. Step back and pretend that you're older than 12 years old and that you can understand basic biology and barriers in the body and stuff. And visualize how stupid a person would have to be to actually believe that a suction cup put over the skin is pulling old blood out of a muscle 2 inches deeper in there. Okay, that's insane. That's not even biologically possible. It is biologically impossible. All you're doing is bruising the muscle, and all of the blood that's coming out is coming from the capillaries running through the skin and the first layers of subcutaneous fat. You're breaking all those capillaries and creating, ironically, you're creating a pulling of new blood turning into old blood because it's turning into a bruise. And I'm just shocked that intelligent people fall for this. I really am. I really am. So when he goes to someone like this and he's putting all these suction cups on there and putting big bruises on his leg, Scott's then basically walking around advertising that he falls for charlatanry. Okay, that's what he's advertising, walking around with the bruises now on the back of his leg. And I understand he's desperate. He's willing to try anything. But, this is not the way to do it. Doing placebo stuff because you have muscle imbalances and keep getting hurt is not going to address the problem. The problem is that Scott has weak spinal erectors and weak hamstrings. Okay? If you watch when he deadlifts in the past, like even in that video, he deadlifts, I guess, whatever, close to 500 pounds, 500. That deadlift, first of all, doesn't count. That's not even a correct deadlift. If we were to look at it from what we define as a deadlift in competition, that would be red lighted. Okay, also you guys know that he not only has to hitch, he has to hitch because he doesn't have the hamstring strength to lock it. So he starts cat back, starts rounded, use nothing but upper back. Upper and mid back is what he deadlifted with, and some quad. And you don't necessarily need strong quads to get a conventional started in that manner. He basically avoids using his hamstrings. Okay, he's rounded back, so he gives a leverage advantage. When, don't get me wrong, thoracic rounding is an advanced technique, right, to let you lift more weight. But he's excessive with it, and then he has to hitch at the top. Why does he have to hitch at the top and use only back to get it up? And momentum of, again, using again, pressing off the thigh to do it. Because he doesn't have the hamstring strength or the glute strength to lock it out. He doesn't have the hamstrings to lock it through. The same thing, you have a guy like him, he comes around and focuses on the above the knee rack pulls, because again, he's taking his hamstrings and his glutes out of the equation on everything that he does. Okay? And he's just training trying to train the upper back, trying to train the traps during this heavy partial movement, which creates its own set of issues. But essentially, Scott has created a situation to where he has very weak spinal erectors relative to the rest of his body, and he has very, very weak hamstrings. Okay? This is what's causing him to repeatedly pull his hamstrings. He's now anterior dominant because he does do some quad work. He's interior dominant. Weak hamstrings, weak lower back. What Scott needs to do to correct this issue is that he needs to be doing good mornings. He needs to be doing good mornings, and he needs to be doing glute ham raises. Because he hasn't developed all the heads. He has at least one weak head in his hamstrings. It has almost no development. That needs to be addressed with the glute ham raise. He needs to start doing more posterior chain dominant work. His squats are completely anterior dominant. And because that's all he has, that's what he has to rely on. When he deadlifts, his technique suggests that he tries to use nothing but back and completely pull the lower body out of the equation. Why? Because it's not strong enough to handle the load, so he has to compensate. So interior dominance, weak erectors, weak hamstrings, lack of overall complete hamstring development. Only 2 of his heads of his hamstrings are even developed at all. They're underdeveloped relative to the rest of his strength and his physique. All right, Scott needs to get in and do these movements. He needs to be doing good mornings. He needs to build his lower back up. Very, very high rep good mornings. He needs to increase his lower back work capacity, his lower back recovery. That will adjust what's happening with his hamstrings part of the way. He needs to develop all 3 heads of the hamstring. So he probably needs to be doing glute ham raises. And he's at a point where I would even consider recommending getting in and doing some glute bridges. Scott needs to put in some serious posterior chain time. Like his entire posterior chain is dramatically lagging. It is extremely weak. And this is what causes the injuries. And this is the point I make. Look, a lot of guys who chase this whole aesthetics thing in a certain look, they'll be like, well, I don't want any of that. I don't want to be a truck butt. I don't want to look like a cow. And they come up with this silly nonsense, but then they get hurt. Right? Because this is the problem you have. You create these sort of imbalances because you don't want a certain look, and then you get hurt doing barbell rows. You get hurt trying to pick up and move a box. You get hurt doing other stuff because you think that you're a strong person. In your mind, you're strong and athletic because you train your quads and your upper body, right? That's what happens in people's mind. But they're not. They have glaring, massive weaknesses in major muscle groups. And what that translates to is when you walk around doing day-to-day stuff, when you go to sprint or run an athletic endeavor, and you're not athletic because you've been a goofy bodybuilding aesthetic, bro, you tear a hamstring. You go to pick up something incorrectly, such as getting into position on a row. You tear a hamstring. Okay? Posterior chain development is absolutely critical to be strong and well balanced. And he just hasn't bothered to develop his correctly. And everything that he does, he compensates around the fact that he doesn't develop these areas. And it's very obvious when you see him deadlift or anything else. It is extremely obvious that he has to compensate for just complete lack of posterior chain strength and development. And so he's going to tear his hamstring again and again and again and again, and keep having to go back to get octopus suction cups put on it until he actually fixes the strength imbalance and quits relying on placebo and quacks to make it feel better. You're going to have to actually strength train, Scott. You're going to have to drop the silly ass rack pulls and actually do correct movements. That's what you need to do, brother. It will fix this problem because it's going to keep happening. It's going to keep happening the rest of your life at this point. All right, guys. Well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.